So you jump right into this mess, and give us a sense of what things were like when you first stepped in.
You know, it's so hard in many ways to describe what the situation was because it was as if almost everything was broken. So we inherited a situation on the academic side where, as I said earlier, 8% of the 8th graders were on grade level in mathematics, where if you were a high school student entering into 9th grade, your chances of graduating from college were about 9%. If you were a little one coming into our system, basically what it showed is that when you were coming in as a kindergartner, you were basically on par with kindergartners in other cities. But the problem was that the longer you stayed in our school district, the worse off you were. By the time you were in the 3rd grade, you were far below your urban counterparts. It was almost as if kids were better off staying home every day than coming to school where you were almost sure to fall behind. We had a system where we couldn't pay teachers on time, where textbooks would be sitting in the warehouse undelivered while, you know, books, no one had the books in the classrooms that they needed. You know, we bought computers that first year. We were so excited. We said, oh, we're buying 6,000 computers. We're going to deploy them all throughout the city. And I got a call that first day of people saying, this is not going well. I said, why not? Computers, everybody's happy about computers. And they said, because many of the classrooms only have 2-pronged outlets, so they don't have the 3-pronged outlets that actually support a computer. And it is that level of, you know, absolute dismay and dysfunction in the school district. And you really cannot underestimate how broken many aspects of that district were.
In the midst of all of those problems, safety issues, infrastructure issues, and why did you, or what did you zero in on as the core problem you were going to address? Plenty to go around, but what was the one you were going to put at the top of the list that you were going to address?
Well, the first thing that we did was we thought about sort of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and we wanted to sort of clean up some of the basic issues first, make sure that everyone was getting paid, that they were getting their books, that they were on, you know, health care, et cetera, because we knew that anything, you know, that we were going to put in place, if those things weren't present, it was important. But the thing that we really focused on in our theory of change and our theory of action was around human capital. We really believed that the way that we could have the most impact on our children was to make sure that there was an excellent teacher in every classroom, in front of every kid every single day, and there was an excellent principal leading every single school. So that was really where our focus area was on human capital, was on talent, was on making sure that we had the best teachers and principals possible.
So with that in mind, what were some of the big moves that you started doing right away in the district?
Well, this is a lot of what you'll read about and see. We decided to close 23 of the schools in the district, which was about 15% of our inventory.
Have you ever heard of any district doing 23 school closings at one time?
At the time that we did that, no. There had never been a school district that closed that many schools all at once. You know, and the plan that I inherited when I got there was they knew they had to close that many schools, but they just wanted to do, you know, 3 a year for 8 years, that sort of thing. So we closed 23 schools. I cut the central office administration in about half. When I got there, there were about 1,000 people working at the central office, and by the time I left, there were less than 500. And I would say the central office was operating better than it ever had before. I removed about 2/3 of the principals in the district, about 1,000 educators. So there was a lot that was going on. But I would say this, that separate and aside from all of those numbers, the one thing that I tried to do was to create a different culture in the school district. And it was a culture where we thought about every single child and every single family in the same way that we would think about our own children and our own families. So let me give you an example of this. I sent my own 2 kids, I have 2 little girls, and I sent them to the DC public schools. Because it's a different level of accountability when you know that the decisions that you're making every day are going to impact your own 2 kids. And so one day we were having a policy discussion about a new teacher evaluation system that we were going to put in place. And the question was, if a teacher is evaluated as ineffective, how long should we keep them in the system, and what should we try to do to support them and professionally develop them, et cetera. And so, some people were sort of arguing, well, we should let them stay for 2 years or 3 years, and we should, try to get them better. And I said to myself, well, gosh, if we make that decision, right, that we're going to let an ineffective teacher stay in the classroom for a second year, then I have to be comfortable knowing that that person might be teaching one of my kids. And I would never let that happen. Let me be very clear. No one in this room would ever, knowingly and willingly say, oh, yes, I'm going to put my child in that classroom, right? If I came to school on the first day and my child's principal said, here's Olivia's teacher, guess what? She's not so good. But we are going to take this year to professionally develop her and see if she can get better. Olivia and her 23 classmates may not learn how to read, but we think this is the right thing to do for the system. There's no way I would allow that to happen. And so in my mind, if I wasn't... If that was a policy that I was not willing to subject my own children to, then that was not a policy that I was willing to put in place so that any other mother or father in the city would be subjected to that for their children.
So you make all these changes. You made them pretty quickly. Hundreds of people, lost their jobs, school closings, a lot of criticism. At one point, I think they were picketing your office every week. Did that begin to wear on you? How did you handle the weight of all the criticism coming from parents, ex-employees, whatever?
They did. They picketed my office, and one day they actually came to my house, and my mother was there, and she said, oh, there are some people outside. They're getting really excited about something. And I said, Mom, they are here to protest me. And she's, oh my gosh. It's interesting, when I was going through the school closure process, my parents were in town. And my parents are very sort of, old school Korean folks. They're not rabble-rousers. So they come to town, and I'm going through the school closures. So one day they wake up, they open the Washington Post. There's a 2-page spread, on all the school closures and pinpointing where I'm closing all the schools. They turn on the TV, and there's news shots of me, getting yelled at and all those sorts of things. So I get home about 11 o'clock at night that night, and I'm making myself a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. My mother walks into the kitchen. She says, are you okay? I said, yeah, I'm fine, I was just eating my sandwich. And she said, when you were young, you never seemed to care what other people thought about you. She said, I always thought you were going to grow up to be very antisocial. She said, I see now that this is serving you well. And so I think it was, part of it was sort of an inborn trait in me, is that, you can yell at me, that's okay, get it out. I don't take it personally. And I think that's important. I think that once you, if you're the kind of person who, if somebody yells at you or criticizes you or takes you to task on something, it makes you feel bad, then I think this is not the profession for you. I tell people this all the time. I would much rather have had a room full of people there who disagreed with me and who were screaming and yelling at me than the opposite, which is what I saw in many communities, which was I'd go someplace and I'd say I was going to close down a school and nobody was there. I would much rather deal with anger than apathy.